coming. The way we're going to run this is we're going to hear from Dominic and Bill. Did Bill get in?
Yeah, and Tino's there too from Woodman Architect.
Okay, to present their information, and then we will do questions and answers afterwards. Erin is here so that she can answer questions that are more on the city side, that are not specific to the project. Okay, and I want to first thank you for coming out and spending this time with us. And I apologize that many of you were not aware of the first meeting, and there was communication issues, and I apologize for that. It's important to have notice. It's important to know about these meetings. It should be noted that this is a file that has not that has not been applied for yet. It is unusual to have meetings before applications apply because there is no requirements for it, but we do feel that it's very important. I certainly feel it's important for you to hear about it as soon as possible, especially when the developer makes that offer, and we want to get that information to you. So I can understand that because it's something new, it's the first development of this nature on Carling under the zoning, and I think it hit everyone kind of, on the side of the head because they hadn't seen something like this before. So I can understand that this was a big surprise, and I apologize again. Communications is definitely going to be improved next time, and that's why we're having this meeting again. It's the same information because unless the applicant has done something different, but again, because they haven't applied, we don't know. So we'll let them speak. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Dominic and Bill, to present, and then we'll go on to questions after. And pardon me, just a second. I should mention that we'll do questions in chat as much as possible. It might make it easier that way for people to put out the information what they want. And because there's a large number of people, there's over 40 people, it'll just make it a little more orderly. And then we have the information and we can continue through the questions. And it should be noted that this meeting is being recorded. So like the previous meeting. Okay, now I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
So I'll introduce myself. I'm Dominic Santaguida. I'm one of the owners of the property at 1940 Carling Avenue. And along with some other local investors, we own this property and are looking to redevelop. And we've engaged Bill Holtzman as our planner and Tino Talat from Woodman Architect as our main architect. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill. He can start the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dominic, and thank you, Councillor and Connie, for setting this up. It's a great turnout, and we're anxious to get some more feedback from the area residents and community association. So as the councillor indicated, this is the second informal community information session, and we'll give a brief overview of the land use planning issues, applications that are going to be filed. As well, then the architect Tino will take a walk through his design in a high-level approach, and then I turn it over to you because we find that it's more advantageous for residents to speak their mind, and we're digesting what we've heard already from our pre-consultation meeting with city staff, from our previous information session, from discussions with other stakeholders. So we're jotting things down. We haven't made any changes since we presented this back I think it was the last day in March. So with that in mind, I'll give you a couple of points about the land use planning. So at this point, we plan to work as best we can within the current arterial Main Street subzone. We're at this point then only going to be filing a site plan control application. I'm sure Aaron will outline some of the issues with that and the process for that. We've come up with preliminary concepts after a formal pre-application meeting with city staff, and that's what Tino is going to speak to. So what guides us is a number of features and elements in land use planning. Of course, the zoning is one of them, but I'll start with the official plan. The official plan is a guiding a tool that provides objectives for both the proponents, for city staff and council to consider when they're looking at, well, in this case, a land development project. The designation of the lands is arterial Main Street, and that is the full length of Carling Avenue pretty well from tip to toe. So it's an arterial Main Street, and it's been that way for many years. Subsequent to the adoption of the official plan, City Council adopted a zoning bylaw amendment for the whole city, and they made a couple of tweaks to it, but the current zoning is an AM, again, an arterial Main Street, a subzone 10 with an exception. The exception just added some other uses to a fairly long list of both residential and non-residential uses. So our intended use is considered a mid-rise apartment building. Those are apartment buildings that are between 5 and 9 stories. We aren't proposing mixed use at this point. It would be a sole use building. There's no secondary plan or community design plan for this area of the city. That is another tool that the city has in particular areas to give more specifics to permissions. There's also design criteria in an official plan for these types of areas, and that is being considered as we go through the design. There's also the city's urban design review panel that has input into this, and they provide guidance to the proponent and city staff. And we've had our pre-consultation with them as well, got some strong feedback from them, and that's helped to shape the current concept that we're going to present tonight. As the councillor said, we haven't submitted yet. We're engaging the various consultants, and we can run through some of the technical studies that are underway right now. Those do take a month or two to pull together. So our application for site plan control is at least a month away. There'll be probably, there's formal notice of all of that, and there's a process. And again, we're more than happy to sit down with a group like this, virtually or otherwise, and get into specifics when we filed the actual application. But right now, it's a design concept. A couple of other factors here. The city does talk in their official plan about compatibility, and oftentimes some of the technical studies that we would be doing help to consider that issue and weigh the pros and cons, things like sun shadow studies, wind studies, servicing stormwater, traffic studies. Those are all some of the studies we're doing to look at whether this proposal is compatible. Now, everyone will have their opinion of that. But those are some of the ways that the city can measure compatibility. There's also some other significant issues related to Carling Avenue. In the official plan, it points it out as a light rail transit corridor, a bus rapid transit route, primary cycling route. I'm just reading from my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. But the idea here, and I mean, Erin, if she's asked to comment, is there are areas of the city that are looked upon for opportunities for intensification, and this along Carling Avenue is one of those. Again, a quick note about the zoning, as I said, it's an AM subzone. And again, we're trying to work within it. There's the zoning bylaw includes purposes for lands that are so zoned, and this purpose of a mid-rise apartment building is one that is one of the purposes. I should mention that the type of tenure of a building like this is not a zoning issue. The zoning does not distinguish between rental or condo or ownership. That can be decided along the way. So at this point in time, Dominic may have a comment on that, but there's no requirement at this point. There is an approval process if one wants to establish individual units for sale. And I'll leave that to Dominic. We don't have to decide that now. It does have an impact, I'm sure, on some of your thought patterns, but that's something that is decided upon often a little later. There's quite a lengthy design, review, approval, and construction period, and I guess if we all knew what the market would be like in probably 24 to 36 months from now, then maybe there could be a statement that says we will do condo, or sorry, our client will do condo or will do rental. But right now, there's so many things up for discussion, and the market does weave and change. So I'll just leave that at that. So the next stage is really to receive input, as we have from the previous meeting, from some of your neighbors. I'm not sure if there's any other people that have attended before. I think I may see the odd person that attended before. That's fine. From stakeholders, and then of course through the submission and then the technical review. And there's a formal process for that, ultimately leading to a decision by city council, city staff. I'm sorry. They do have delegated approval authority on site plans, but again, I'll leave that for Aaron and the councillors. So right now, I'll turn it over. Maybe we'll do questions at the end. So I'll turn it over to Tino. He's here somewhere who can walk you through a presentation of the design. And certainly we're here. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Okay, thank you. So I'll mute my mic and turn it over to Tino.
Connie, can you unmute Tino, please?
He should be able to unmute himself, but okay.
Okay,
There we go.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Connie, I guess you'll be controlling the screen. Are you able to put A1?
I have the proposed site plan. Is that what you want me to put up?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so that's basically the site plan that we're proposing, which would be the footprint of the building. In the AM zone, there's a 7.5 meter setback at the rear of the property. Then from the rear of the property for 20 meters, there's a height restriction, which is the lighter shade of gray on the roof at the back end. That has an 11 meter height limit. Then along the street, there's a 20 meter height limit. So basically we're going to be stepping the building up. On the lower area, we're looking at a landscape terrace on the roof of the 4th floor and a fully landscaped area at the rear of the property. What's not shown here, after some of the preliminary discussions that we had, we'll also be adding a landscape buffer on the terrace, which will provide additional screening and privacy for the adjacent neighbors on the side. There's currently also a 1.2 meter hydro easement that surrounds the site on 3 sides, down the 2 side yards and at the rear. If you can go to also after the first meeting that we had, there was talk about putting all the parking underground. We originally had a concept that had more parking on grade. We're now looking at underground parking, ramping in from the east side of the property. Ground floor will have a couple of units, garbage, and some amenity space. The basement will also have the bicycle parking. Next. And that's basically the floor plans. The 2nd floor is slightly recessed where we have the drive aisle. And then the 3rd and 4th floor are the ones on the left-hand side, right-hand side. Then we step the building back at the 20 meter distance from the rear property line. The 5th floor will have access to the terrace at the back, which is also the south end of the property. So we'll get a lot of sunlight in that area. And also for the adjacent neighbors, most of the shadows will be cast onto Carling Avenue. Then the upper floors are just the units on the side. Yeah, that's just the roof plan. and some calculations. The elevations, do you have the colored elevations with that? These are more the working drawing proposals. Okay. That's the Carling side. So basically, we ended up with a strong band across the lower base, which sort of ties in with the existing lower residential units that are currently there, knowing that somewhere down the road, those sites will also be developed. We stepped down the brick on the sides, again, just to allow for some transition, and then lighter material on top. So it's basically going to be a masonry building with Juliet type balconies. If you want to show one of the other ones. Now we will be adding landscaping at the front of the building as well. This was just a concept. This is a concept at the upper area where it was going to be the amenity zone. So what we're currently working on is carrying a landscape buffer around the perimeter, which will also provide a bit more privacy for the adjacent properties. That's the rear of the building. So as I said, the front of the building, we will be adding landscaping and probably some bicycle, some areas for bicycles to be parked as well. And that shows where the drive aisle is to the parking. So that's about it from our end.
Tino, if I could you explain a little bit more about the drive aisle and the access in and out of the site for vehicles, not only tenants or patrons, but also for drop-off and deliveries, please?
Basically, the drive aisle is at, it would be on the east side of the building. So it's as you're driving past the building, you see where you're going and you turn in. There's a couple of spots up on the ground floor level, and we're also looking at maybe expanding into the side yard a little bit to provide more of a drop off. But basically, that's the lane that leads into the underground parking. Yes, and garbage will also come out of that area. The main garbage room is on the ground floor. So garbage is contained, bicycle storage, the main storage for the building will be underground, and as will most of the vehicular parking spots.
Has the number of parking spots changed?
No, we've provided the parking according to the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think we can go to questions if that's, unless you have anything more. We had a question, Dominic, from the neighbors directly behind, and I had the privilege of being at their place on Friday to see their lot. And they did have concerns about trees, and because these are older trees, distinct trees, and they wanted to know if you would meet on site to look at some of their concerns.
Sure. If they're amenable to that, I will for sure. No problem.
Okay,
Councillor, if I could, there was, we didn't get into the details, but because of the underground parking structure, typically you often would go from lot line to lot line, but we have, first of all, a constraint, or actually an opportunity in this case, where there's a 1.2 meter hydro easement that surrounds the three sides. So right away, no structure can go down there as well. But we've also looked at extending that buffer, that actual underground structure, further away from the southern property line, again, to give what's there a better opportunity of surviving on that common property line, as well as an opportunity for actually to augment it with some more actual trees. So we talked about the building setback of 7.5, but a building setback doesn't necessarily relate to the setback of an underground structure, but we're already going to be at least 1.2 meters and likely further away from that southern property line to address that exact legitimate concern of the neighbors there.
thank you. I see Kathy's asking about the viability of particularly of the roots of the existing trees and how they're protected. So it's not, obviously you have to protect the roots or the tree won't survive, which falls under, I was discussing this actually on site, that there is a tree bylaw now. Erin, would you care to elaborate on the tree bylaw and how it works?
I'm just trying to recall my diameter sizes depending on the size of the property. My recollection is that I think the new urban tree bylaw is any tree greater than 10 centimeters in diameter as part of a development review project. I should back up a step. As part of their site plan control application, the applicant will be required to submit a tree conservation report. So it'll show all the trees that exist on the property right now, what the plans are for either maintaining trees or when trees are proposed to be removed. And then we have foresters in-house at the city that will review that tree conservation plan and look at all the trees in the area, including the surrounding trees that are on adjacent borders, basically the property lines, to see what potentially we would issue a tree removal permit for. And that's associated with the development process. So no permit would be issued for tree removal until we reviewed those plans as part of the process. And then as well, there would be a requirement for a landscape plan submitted as part of the application as well that shows any replacement plantings that would be reviewed by city foresters to determine where any replacement trees are being proposed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's my understanding, but I like hearing it from you. Doug Thomas is asking about landlord management. How, I guess basically how you're going to manage the property because you have, in terms of control over renters rather than owners, and that owners can sublet, but and what kind of demographic are you trying to attract?
For right now, we're looking at people that would possibly be working at the future expansion of the Ottawa Hospital and people that would like to downsize from their homes and stay in the neighborhood. Our intent is to have an on-site supervisor, superintendent live in the building. And it's always been our intention to vet our tenants. And from our experience, we're able to control tenants better than we can control actual owners, because owners tend to want to do their own thing and not want to follow the rules. Find condo owners have feel they have more privilege in the building that they have ownership in rather than renters.
Okay.
But like Bill said previously, we're 2 and a bit years out before we would be dealing with actually having people in the building. So that's what it stands at right now, but who knows what's going to happen.
Okay, the parking, you said you hadn't changed it. Can you just go over the parking again?
The parking, there were 35 parking spots, 33 in the basement and 2 off the entrance drive aisle. And that was based on 0.5 per dwelling and 0.1 for visitor. understanding that the first 12 units don't count in calculation.
Why is that?
That's because it's part of the zoning bylaw. In area X, the first 12 units don't, you're able to remove them from the parking plan.
Okay. Aaron, can you talk about the parking requirements for buildings in general?
Councillor, to be fair, I haven't looked into this particular site for the parking requirements because they do vary throughout the city, but it's a pretty standard requirement that there's 0.5 parking spaces required under the zoning bylaw for every unit in an apartment dwelling. I'd have to remind myself of whether there's exclusions for the initial few buildings, but that sounds familiar. All that zoning review would be done through when the site plan application is submitted as well. The planner that's assigned at that time would review those zoning details in detail to see whether any amendments are required or minor variance associated with that, or whether the proposal meets the zoning bylaw requirements.
The area, the city is divided into a bunch of different areas, area X, area Y, etc. And in those different areas, it also gives you the different calculations that you would use for parking. So it's all in the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, so it's the minimum because you could have more if you wished. If you wanted tenants that drove cars, you would have more parking.
Well, especially in that area with the transit way that they're proposing and turning Carling into a main, I guess, bus route.
Yeah.
We feel that more parking wouldn't really serve much.
I guess that's one of the concerns I'm hearing from the community is they don't believe that people will be living without cars. I mean, I have two sons, no cars, but it does, that there'll be cars parked along their streets and that they'll absorb the people that didn't get parking spots. And so that's the concern. Is there any provision for anything like a car sharing program?
Like Virtue Card, we've done that on previous projects, and that's something that the owner could certainly look into. There are a couple of companies, Virtue Card, and there's another one as well, and a lot of the apartments now have such parking spots. So it's something we could look into.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about plantings in the front of the building. It doesn't, how are you going to make it so they can survive being so close to Carling?
We're going to have a landscape architect looking at that. We are set back from Carling, and there are species that are more salt resistant. So it'll probably be in some sort of a planter just to keep it elevated from the salt. But we will have a landscape architect working on the project.
Okay. There's a question about will you make sure that no trees are trimmed or removed before the site visit is done by the city forestry? In other words, you're not doing anything right now before that process starts.
No, and every tree is well documented on Google Earth, and we've already engaged a surveyor to survey the property, and all the trees are shown on the property as they exist today. And we'll stay there until we're ready to start development.
Yeah. Will this project need to meet city? Yes, it does. We've already discussed that it'll meet the city tree bylaws that got brought in. What is the required setback from Carling? You mentioned landscaping at the front, because it doesn't look like there's much space. And since this is an important arterial main street, does this meet bylaw?
Yeah, maybe I'll address that. The actual minimum setback is 0. Again, it goes back to more of a higher level discussion of what the intention of the official plan adopted by City Council is for streets like Carling Avenue. These are intended to be the streets where you do move things towards the edge. You do create an urban edge for a number of reasons. You make those buildings very accessible to the facilities within that roadway, be it a BRT eventually, or light rail, or cycling route, which it is designated cycling route, or regular bus stops. So that's the intention there. So we intend to consider that 0 setback, but I should also mention, and I noticed a couple of questions about the arterial Main Street and the actual right-of-way width for Carling Avenue. The city's official plan does a number of things. Aaron can back me up on this, that it also sets out minimum requirements for the width of a right-of-way. So the right-of-way is in Carling Avenue, the area where the actual driving surface is, where the curbs are, where sidewalks are, where utilities are, and other features. So in this particular case, the city's official plan sets out a minimum requirement for a road widening or road allowance widening. So we're already contemplating that. And so there's going to be a strip of land removed and conveyed to the city for a nominal sum. And from that point then is where our new property line will be. It's somewhere between 4 and 7 meters of land that's taken on our side. So the building would be set at that limit. But again, within that widened limit, ultimately the city owns it. They can do what they want with it. But of course, as they urbanize roads, add bus lanes, add cycling routes, add sidewalks, there's landscaping strips. So there's a whole factor or a whole feature of these new roads. And again, and not to steal Aaron's thunder, but that's part and parcel of what would happen along that frontage ultimately. None of this happens overnight, but it's all the long-term plan of the city. So Carling will be widened, the road allowance, and then of course there'll be roadway modifications at the whim of council as they approve these new infrastructure programs.
Thank you. Brian has asked questions that are related to the right of way. I'll just go through it. I think you've pretty well covered it, but Brian will correct me if I'm wrong. Please confirm that as per the official plan, Annex 1, Table 1, the right of way of Carling Avenue between Richmond Road and Bronson Avenue shall be protected to accommodate 44.5 right of way and will be enforced.
Yes, I mentioned that, yes.
Yes, and based on the above, it is anticipated that the approximately 7 to 7.25 meters of right-of-way dedication currently appears to be 30 meters plus or minus adjacent to 1940 will be required by the city in conjunction with any development of this property.
Right, we've already addressed that, and
Yep.
it could be upwards of the 7.25. There's some talk about taking a little bit less, but again, that's something that will be part of the technical review by the city.
And Councillor, if I can just step in for a second and just clarify that 44.5 meter protection for the right of way allows for the city to take up for that from the center line of the roadway. So that's part of our review when the application comes in, is to confirm where the surveyed center line of Carling Avenue is, and it gives us the right to take 22.25 meters from that center line, whatever the difference is between that current property line and the 22.5. We may take up to the 22.5. In some cases, we don't exercise that option for the full right-of-way widening. It depends on where future plans are for Carling at that time, what's being happened in the area. So I just wanted to clarify that we have the right to do that through the review of the application. We'll be discussing with the applicant, but it's not an automatic that we automatically take up to the 44.5. It depends on the context and the situation at hand.
Thank you, Aaron. I apologize I didn't say your proper title because you're the Manager of Development Review for the West End. And so just so people know that for our planning department. Looking at the next question, as Carling is a main artery, how is it going to accommodate light rail and designated bike lanes? Won't Carling have to be significantly widened to accommodate these? And how will the developer adjust his plans? Well, I think we've covered this, Anna. And I should mention that at this point, the lanes are actually going to happen this summer. They are putting in the bus lanes along Carling from right from Bayswater right to Lincoln Field. And so the outer lanes are gonna be bus lanes, and they will be available to cyclists at this point. Now, are there going to be separate cycle lanes in the future? Yes, I hope so, but that's not the case at the moment. Okay, there's already a lot of cross-through traffic on Leominster. Have you looked into the impact of the neighborhood traffic from this development? And are you considered traffic mitigation measures, especially on Leominster?
One of the technical studies that was required by city staff and ultimately by council is a traffic impact assessment, and that's just getting started now. The consultant needed to know the sort of the scope of the building itself, so we have an idea of roughly how many units it could be, and then between the consultant and city staff, they determined the appropriate scope of work, what kind of intersections should be considered, what kind of local streets, and all of the type of traffic that's being generated today and for the future, because you plan for 5 years, a minimum of 5 years beyond the build out. So those are numbers that the consultant and the city work on, and they do a kind of a staged traffic study. It takes a number of months to do it, and it's usually the last study done by the time you submit your application, but it's a very important one, especially in this case when we're backing onto a mature neighborhood.
Someone's comment, it's more of a comment. I'm not sure if many of us would want to move into a studio apartment out of our homes. So that's more of a comment. Well, it does happen in that people do because they move into retirement homes and other places too that are much, much smaller. But it's certainly not for everybody, and people like to stay in their homes as long as possible. Doug, I know you want to speak on an issue. If you don't mind, I'm just going to read the questions through, and we'll do that at the end if you're okay with that. From Claudia, I'm interested in the compatibility studies that Bill mentioned. Can you explain a bit more regarding A, what they would examine, B, when would they take place, and C, would their results be publicly available?
They're underway now. They deal with things like sun shadow, noise, wind, land use compatibility, traffic compatibility, things, vegetation, things like that. So it's all rolled into one. It's all rolled into part of the submission, and of course, all of those studies are available through the city's DevApp sites. Again, Aaron will outline that for review and comment and critique by the public and technical agencies as well.
Thank you. Valerie's asking about, because there's a lot of mail ordering and delivery, like right now through the pandemic. Have you considered that? And she was urging to increase the street level parking for deliveries and short-term parking.
Yeah, Tino, maybe if you put the ground floor plan up, or Connie, if you could, then Tino, you could walk people through how you expect on-site deliveries to take place, because I think it's a picture will tell 1,000 words here.
Okay, thank you.
Next drawing, please. On the right-hand side, basically, we would on the eastern or on the right-hand side is where the driveway comes in, and then about 40 feet in, there's a couple of parking spots. That's what we're looking at currently as a drop-off area. Then there would be, we're probably looking at an oversized mail room or a box drop-off at the front, where parcels could be dropped off and then picked up by the tenants as they move in. But basically, that's what we're proposing. So it's in on the east side. There's a couple of short-term parking spots, and that would be the drop-off area. Now, we're also looking on the right side, closer to the property line, even though we can't build on top of that, we can use part of that for parking. So we're taking a look at what we can do with the hydro easement in terms of turning it into another sort of short-term parking spot. That's
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Doug is asking, transit ridership is in a marked decline. The overflow will move onto the side streets, and that will lead to bylaw enforcement, thereby changing the nature of the community. I guess you're talking about parking, that parking will move onto the side streets. Okay, so yeah, and that's what I asked about the concern about that. Have you considered the rooftop to be the community outdoor space and leaving the fourth floor roof as green landscape to retain neighborhood properties privacy?
Well, actually, at the back of the property, it's quite heavily landscaped. So I believe the privacy is there. Going higher is probably no different. When you're closer to the tree line, there's less opportunity to actually look over the trees into the backyards. But with the landscaping buffer that we're looking at providing around the perimeter, that keeps the users further away from the edges of the building, so it acts as a screen to the adjacent properties.
Are you willing to work with the community members that live adjacent to the properties on that point?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Christine's asking, is there really only one elevator? Shouldn't there be more in a building with 72 units?
There's only the one need because the high portion, there's only 6 units per floor going up. The rest, typically in the lower floors, most people tend to use the stairs. But at this point, we're only looking at one elevator.
I should add, Councillor, the number of units and the type of units is still in flux. It's very early, so there may be a change in number of units downward when we get closer to a final design, depending on, again, what someone in a silver, crystal ball can determine what's going to be the market for this. But the 72 units is what is shown on those plans, but we have to take into a lot of other features and factors, including what people are suggesting, so to see what the final number of unit will be. And then that also affects the parking supply as well, of course.
I think I can speak for the community that they were pretty shocked at the number of units, considering this was a single family home, and going to 72 units was quite something. And so they were very concerned about that. Brian is asking about the Arterial Main Street zoning. Identifies a minimum residential setback of 3 meters from the front property line. Please confirm that this will be maintained and not reduced.
Yeah, our research shows that it's actually a minimum of 0, but we will obviously be double checking that or triple checking that. So we appreciate the comment, but as we said at the outset, we're planning to try to work within the current zoning bylaw, unless sometimes there's suggestions even by stakeholders, neighbors, staff that actually would stimulate the need for a variance because they think it can make for a better project. But right now, no, we're intending to work within that box that's permitted with all of the requirements, and we'll see what that pans out. The bylaw doesn't set a maximum number of units. It doesn't set an FSI. It's governed by the building mass that you can put on there and the market for the type of units. And again, there's certainly a need for rental units in the city, especially along an arterial main street. So that's what Dominic and his group, who are doing a project down in Ottawa South right now that are looking at. And it's still a long ways away, but I'm not saying this isn't valuable. This is very valuable information, but there's going to be an awful lot of changes between now and the time when you see it's posted on the DevApp site in 2 or 3 months. That's just the nature of it. And again, once we submit, and Aaron will tell you, once we submit, everyone gets a kick at the can or kicks at the can, and it changes again. So again, from now till then, things can change. And again, these are very important meetings because we're hearing loud and clear that there's I guess, a desire to either lower the number of units or increase the number of parking spots, or both. But again, we're considering that, and we'll have to make sure that it's still a feasible project going forward.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
There's a from sorry, I can't read the name. Arinya. We're concerned about the building being so close to Carling Avenue. The sidewalk is narrow, and very often you feel like you're going to get hit by a bus rear view mirror. Plus, with the entrance exit to the underground garage to a very busy Carling Avenue, will create jams for pedestrians and create dangerous situations. In addition, no passenger drop-off area, no food delivery. Well, we've gone through that stopping zone, and no stopping zone for emergency vehicles will endanger people's pedestrian, cyclists, and create dangerous traffic situations. So it's basically pedestrian safety. How is that being taken into consideration here?
Tino, do you want to?
From our end, basically on the exiting, we have, we're proposing a glazed area as coming out. So you're set further back from the sidewalk. So somebody driving out will be able to see. We're not in a tight funnel where you have no lateral vision as you're driving. And the rest of it is basically we're following the zoning bylaws. There's the front yard, there's actually a minimum setback or maximum setback distance from the property line. So as Bill said, we'll be working with the planners, and this is a starting point. So we'll be looking at all the comments. Okay,
thank you. Team Roselle, I guess that's for this Roselle Crescent. Would the developer request that the city provide access to the building for vehicles traveling west on Carling via a new turning lane added to the medium? Okay. Concern is that it'll be increased traffic on Hare and then Roselle Crescent as vehicles come from the east. Will use this route to turn around and travel east to get to this building. As a resident of Roselle, there is also substantial traffic due to vehicles using the crescent, which are traveling west so that they can turn around and travel east down Carling. Would the city require a new turning lane so vehicles can travel in and out of this building without having excess travel in Glaber Park?
We're going to have a traffic study completed. And once that's completed, it'll be reviewed by the city engineering. So at this point, we're not looking at any openings in the islands. The city is also looking at with the increased bus routes down the street. So there's going to be city modifications to the street, but we're not looking at any modifications right now.
Generally speaking, Aaron, a building of this scale, would it be something that would even be considered for a medium-sized building to incorporate lanes for turning?
I don't want to speculate because I'm not a transportation engineer, but I will go ahead and do so for the purpose of this meeting, that a building with about 70 units. I'm not familiar of a case where we've made changes that significant to the city right away based on a building of that size. Tino's right that when the application comes in, a transportation impact assessment would be completed that outlines what parking and transportation is anticipated on the site. And I did see in the chat there was a question about the transportation impact based on COVID numbers. And so there's data that has come from past traffic counts. So I highly doubt that it would be, the traffic counts are not done today, but there's traffic counts that the transportation engineers get from city sources that outline transportation anticipated transportation from this type of development and how that impacts the current situation. And that transportation study also has to include surrounding developments proposed in the area. So they would look at what's going on, what's being proposed in the area, and take that all into account as part of that transportation study that we would then review and see whether there's mitigation required as part of that, the building requirements, including things like that of that nature. But I'm not familiar of a case where we've required additional or big changes to the travel lanes based on a building of this size.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. It's just as a guideline, and we're not holding you to it. It's more just of what's happened in the past. In regards to increased traffic that will happen, here is an option for the city to close the medium on Carling on Hare. So it's the opposite of closing the medium. That again, I think we can say is going to fall into traffic study. So I don't know if that would fit into the context of this or not. Any comment on that? Not sure how to, if it would.
Not for myself, Councillor. I'd have to understand that comment a little further, I think, about what the intention is, and maybe whether it'd be warranted in that case. So
yeah,
it probably would. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize. Here is where the medium breaks, where people can make turns on Carling. So obviously people turn on Hare because it's the only place if they're going westbound to make a left turn into the community, and it's a couple blocks over. So that's what the comment is about. Mm-hmm. In terms of expecting more traffic. But so it's a hard one to answer at this point. That is something that we can talk to our traffic people about, but as has been mentioned, they must do a traffic impact study that has to be done on a development. So that will be taking place. And I can ask that comment in terms of that. So I should mention to Glaber Park residents that we're looking at the possibility of reducing the speed in Glaber Park to 30. We're looking at that right now. So I've mentioned it to a few people, but that's something that's in progress. That should help in terms of, I'm not talking about increased traffic, but in terms of traffic speed. So we're looking at that as a measure. This is happening all over Ottawa. People are realizing they want slower speeds in their areas. Signs don't change things magically. You put the sign up, doesn't mean everyone's going to automatically go 30K, but you have to put some traffic calming as well. But that's the intent. So just as an aside, that kind of fits in with this conversation. Okay, there's a question about a drive-in area for school bus is necessary to ensure children's safety. There's also a lot of children walking to school on Carling, and the narrow strip of sidewalk left in front of the building will increase dangerous situations. Okay, is there any comment about the width of the sidewalk? Because we've had that mentioned a couple of times in terms of requirement. Is there any intention of widening the sidewalk overall, Erin, for an arterial main street?
Yeah, Councillor, what I was going to say is, generally speaking, that's something that we review through site-specific applications as well, is the width of the existing sidewalk. So we do have the option to pursue widening of sidewalk along the length of a particular property. So we could take a look at this property and see whether the sidewalk that's in place right now is less than what the city would require of a new sort of development moving forward, and we can ask for that as through the site plan control process, that the sidewalk be widened within that right of way in the section directly adjacent to this particular development. So not outside of those boundaries, but we do have the ability to address in front of this particular site. So we'll take a look at that measurement through the review process.
Thank you. Bill Meyer is asking about a traffic study going to take into account all future buildings. It's a good question. Because across the street, there's a proposal for 26 stories at Carling and Bromley, which has not advanced. We met with developers there, but we haven't heard back. But it's fair enough. It's a very fair question.
Yeah, maybe I'll take a stab at that. Again, I mentioned it briefly before. A traffic study looks at not what's happening necessarily today, but 5 years beyond the expected build out of a project like this. And during those 5 years, there's a factor applied to increase the traffic flow depending on known projects or just the standard growth rate in certain areas of the city. So again, those terms of reference are provided by the city to the proponent's consultant, and then the traffic study is done incrementally to look at those things and arrive at whether if the road can accommodate not only this development of up to 70 units or less, but also what's happening, normal growth, other developments. And if it can accommodate to a certain level of standard at the intersections, fine. If it can't, then there's a requirement for some modifications or the project can't proceed or has to change. So those are all things that evolve over the next, probably 6 to 9 months anyhow. But our client is obviously intending to maintain what's a right in, right out eastbound. There's no intention to create a new median break. There's no intention to modify anything. But again, it all comes out through that review. The review also looks at the on-site circulation to see if there's a better way of handling the drop-offs. Obviously, there's people, of course, are shopping differently these days. People are ordering food differently these days. Less people will own cars and have cars here. So we have to make sure that it's functional inside the building. So again, what Tino showed you was a preliminary ground floor footprint with a circulation route. We're looking at, does that accommodate certain size vehicles? But I can tell you that there'd be no garbage, a garbage truck that will come inside the building, but that's not uncommon for areas in the city, especially urban areas. So for that 10 or 15 minutes, there's that operation on a street. And again, as you've just suggested, that outside lane is going to be bus only with cycling, and everyone will manage. That's urban development, but we'll see what we can do to make sure that we can accommodate the best we can, and to city approval, of course, on-site circulation. But the thought of having a lay-by at the front of the building, first of all, it doesn't achieve the goals of having the building at the street edge, which is what the city wants in their urban design. It also would create an in and an out to actual lane, entrances and exits off of Carling. You want to minimize the number of entrances on a busy road like that. So that's what we're proposing at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill is asking about rats and what measures are taken when you're digging up sewers to control this, i.e. if that happens when you're digging up the property.
Well, Dominic's busy excavating on Bank Street in Ottawa South right now, and I guess you leave it up to your contractor to deal with it, right?
I think all the, no, I don't want to say where there's rats or there's no rats, but certainly we have measures in place to mitigate if such things were to occur.
Okay. Thank you. I think this one is about as well about shopping and deliveries from going from 1 unit to 71, recognizing other residential properties along Carling. Most have drive-through entrances or an entry at a cross street. Can you address concerns of a single underground garage to accommodate all these safety issues for pedestrians? I think this has been answered, but if you can just add anything further about the concerns.
You can follow up, but I guess in that area, everyone's familiar. In fact, I was born on Killarney Drive. I know the area very well. The Bromley Tower has an in and an out, but it has a much wider frontage. It also is a much larger building with a very, very extensive amount of parking. So that was the design at that point. The Somerset Tower is just to the west of that, is more of a campus type of development. it was lovely at the time. It's a lovely spot, but it was more of a campus with two buildings. It's two buildings, yes. So that was a design concept. It was also a very large corner lot. This is a single lot. This is a lot that's zoned AM10. This is a lot that, yes, we all know. I've been there 63 years. I know it's a single family house. I know it's a lovely area. I know the area of Glaber Park, but the city council decided very strongly to find areas of the city for intensification. And Carling Avenue is absolutely a prime opportunity now, but there's tests to make sure it's compatible. We're all gonna probably debate and argue whether we're doing enough, but that's what city council in their wisdom with an implementing bylaw, zoning bylaw have established. So that's what we're looking at. And, you know, we were try to balance all of the interests and come up with something that not only that's the client wants, but that city will approve. And ultimately, people that are outgrowing their house or outgrowing the single family houses along in Glaber Park need a place. They've established that this is the area the city want to live. They no longer drive a car. They can get picked up by Uber or OC Transpo or Paratranspo. And this building will be accommodating those kind of uses. So it's not for everybody, that's for sure. But there appears to be a market, and Dominic and his investors have an opportunity here. And again, we're looking for feedback, and we'll see what we can do to minimize impact.
Okay. Brian has specific questions again from 20 meters of the rear lot line, which is abutting residential zoning. The maximum building height is limited to 11 meters. Please confirm that 11 meters restriction is inclusive of all the roofing and will not be increased.
Well, we're conforming with the zoning, and the limits, let's say 11 meters or 20 meters, are for certain parts of the building. There are permitted projections, things like parapets, things like elevator shafts. But again, we're working, that's embedded in the city zoning bylaws. So at this point, we're satisfied that we can deal with, especially the setbacks and the height limits that are established in the bylaw. We're not looking for any relief at all. And that ends up resulting in a 4-story and a step back and then a 7-story, and that's within the limits right now. I should tell the audience that Tino touched on it, that the building will be a minimum of 7.5 meters from the rear lot line. And that area will be landscaped at grade and to be an amenity area. And then you rise up, and then you're going to have, we're proposing that rooftop terrace above the 4th floor. But the bylaw even includes required setbacks for privacy fencing on top of that terrace. Again, the idea being so people can't hang over that and look down and encroach into the neighbors. So the bylaw already establishes another setback for, like the border fence. So, these are measures that the city and in their wisdom have presented to council, and council have adopted to try to minimize impact. Now, I'm not naive. We're all going to have differences of opinions, but those are the things that are already embedded, and that's what we're working with. Maybe we can do more, and we're looking at that as well, as I said, about that setback of the underground parking in the southern property line.
Yeah, I've got to wrap up. I've been keeping people here for a while, and I'm looking at the last questions, and we can get people specific answers if necessary, but I noticed the theme here about the cost of renting. Is it going to be affordable? I think there's a couple of questions related to that. For example, what is the rent? What would the cost be for a 1-bedroom?
So right now, what we're seeing in the marketplace is anywhere from $2.75 to $3 per square foot. So 450 square foot studio apartment would be anywhere from $1,200 and up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's very helpful. So I think we've gotten a lot of questions answered, and we can set up a meeting to meet with you, Dom, and Bill to come out to the residents and take a look at their sites and look at their concerns. I went into the backyards myself, and I think they can be addressed. And Aaron has backed up about things about the tree bylaw and in the right of way that they should be able to deal with those.
Councillor, I should add that we have a forester, arborist on the team. Her name is Astrid Nielsen, and she should be attending that meeting absolutely, because she's the one that has to evaluate work within the
Yeah.
city's rules and guidelines and establish that what can be saved, what can't be saved. So we'll certainly make sure she's at that meeting, right, Dominic?
Sure.
Okay, good,
I'm
good.
not sure if you need to attend, Bill, but I'm happy to attend with Astrid.
That's fine, thanks.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah, I don't want to hold up Aaron too much longer, but Alfred, I see you have your hand up. Is it, if you can have a quick question?
Somebody needs to unmute him.
Oh, okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Hi, thanks. Yeah, my name's Alfred, and just a quick question. I want to circle back to the parking, and I'm kind of projecting, just 20 years, 30 years ahead. I mean, your building's going to have quite a, in terms of lifespan, I'm assuming, probably more than 100 years, and our transportation is going to electrify really fast, like in the next 10, 15 years. So my quick question, and my question is, I don't think there's any requirement in the bylaw for any new development to include electrical capacity on the parking spot. Is that correct? Like there's no requirement on the bylaw right now, right? To have spots where you can charge your electric car.
We will have them, and they are part of the building code, Alfred.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I apologize. I said to Doug that I would leave because he wanted to ask a question, but Doug, do you feel like you got your answers? Because we did ask a bunch of questions from you. Are you good? I can't see him.
He gave sort of a thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Doug. Okay, that's great. Okay, so we will continue in terms of those that are have the concerns around their property to have an on-site meeting. We'll work on that. And I want to thank everyone for coming out. I think it was productive. I think there was very good questions and very important questions. This isn't just about this development. It's also, as we know, it's setting a pattern about what's happening along there, because arterial Main Street means that more is to come. Let's be honest. That's the expectation. And I think it's important to get it right, and that's why involvement is important. So I appreciate your attendance and your questions. Thank you, Aaron, for coming out and giving your expertise, because Aaron's dealt with many, many big projects, and I can tell you that she knows her stuff in terms of how it looks in terms of the overall look, because that's what the city is going for. The official plan is about intensification. 60% of population growth has to come within the urban boundary, and arterial Main Street is an ideal spot for it. The alternative is more houses right in the community, and that can happen too, and that will happen bit by bit, but it's not, the thrust can be done along arterial Main Streets to make them feel more like they're, frankly, when you have things closer to the road, it gives a feeling of a main street rather than having things set back where it feels like a highway. It's actually part of the theory of making things feel like they're a main street, and people tend to respond to that. Think of Westboro, think of Richmond Road. I know it's Carling Avenue, it's not the same, but that's the intent, and that's the intent for the long term. Anyway, so thank you very much, and we certainly will set up meetings with the community members who are interested in that, and so you can contact me through bayward@ottawa.ca, and Connie will help make the arrangements. And thanks, Connie, for all your help tonight, and thank you, Bill and Dom and your team for
Thank you for arranging it. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, take care.
Good night.
Thank you.